So my name is Lindo Smilani. I work with the marketing team at SurveyCTO. We're very, very excited to present to you another exciting webinar. We have a great presentation for you that's coming from our friends and partners from Right to Play Canada, who will be talking to us a little bit about their work with Indigenous communities in Canada and how they ensure accountability as well as data privacy. We know this is a topic that's very important, I think, to many of you, wherever you're working in the world. I think we can all agree that when we're collecting data in local communities, we want to make sure that we're respecting whatever principles apply to that community, and also making sure that we have data privacy and accountability for any data that we collect. But for my job today, I'm just going to introduce to you the platform a little bit so that you can all get familiar with it. Many of you have already found the chat, so I think we're good there. After that, I will be handing over to my colleague, Morphia, who will be moderating today's sessions. Morphia is going to introduce our presenters to us, and then from there, we will jump straight into the presentation. There will be an opportunity for us to take questions from you, so I please ask that throughout the presentation, if you have any questions for our presenters, please make sure you plug them into the Q&A. The Q&A helps us to sort of track the questions more much easier than if you put them in the chat. So as I said, usually we have polls, but we don't have a poll for this session, so no need to worry about that one. But we do ask that you use the chat if you want to engage with anybody else who is part of the session, as some of you, again, have already done. And like I said, the Q&A, you'll find the Q&A button in the bottom of your screen. Please use that to register any questions that you have when we want to make sure we get to them. Some of them may be responded to by writing. Some of them will be responded to by our presenters when we get to the Q&A portion. With that said, I will gladly hand over now to my colleague, Morphia. Again, welcome, everybody. We're happy to have you.
All right. Thanks so much, Lindo. Thank you. Again, welcome, everyone. We're really happy to have you. My job is quite simple. As Lindo mentioned, my name is Morphia Piri. I'm a member of the customer success team, Doability. I'm a customer research advisor. And this afternoon, morning, or evening, depending on where you are, I really just want to take time to introduce our presenters for today. We will have two presenters. The first is Alejandra. Alejandra joined Right to Play in June 2022, first as an intern for the Canadian National Office, and then in September of 2022 as a male coordinator supporting the data collection and evaluation of the programs that the organization has across Canada. These aim to improve the health and psychological well-being of Indigenous children and youth within Canada. She has qualitative and quantitative research experience with the University of Toronto, studying the integration of refugee children and youth into national education systems of host countries, and has a master's degree in educational leadership and policy. So we're excited to hear the work that she has been doing. Our other presenter is going to be Dele, who joined Right to Play as the male manager in September 2021. He works to support the organization's Indigenous programs, which aims at improving health and psychosocial well-being of Indigenous children and youth across Canada. Prior to joining Right to Play, he worked for several development organizations and projects in Africa and Europe and the Middle East. He has over 10 years experience designing mail systems and has a master's degree in development studies. And so I won't say much. I will leave it to Alejandra and Dele to make their presentation, and then I will come back in later to facilitate our question and answer. So as Lindo mentioned, if you have any questions, please type in your questions in the Q&A so that we can get to them during our Q&A session. Alejandra, Dele, over to you.
And just to quickly say hi, everyone, and thanks for joining. So today, like has already been said, we'll be sharing how we as Right to Play ensure that data privacy and accountability in collaboration with the Indigenous communities that we partner with. We'll provide like a brief summary of the organization, Right to Play, also about the play programs we run in Canada. We'll discuss our SurveyCTO data collection workflow and the importance of data collection within our program and why we think it's very valuable. And finally, we'll also take you through our Zapier plugin and how it relates to the OCAP Principles of Indigenous people. So in Canada, we as a practice and as an ally organization to Indigenous people, we open large spaces with the land acknowledgement and the declaration of reconciliatory statements. And we do this to acknowledge the history of injustice towards Indigenous communities in Canada, including the impact of residential schools of which children were most impacted. Our headquarters is located in the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, Seneca, and Mississaugas of the Credit, and we therefore acknowledge all the treaties that recognize First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, and the living relationship between them and all the settlers and visitors in Canada. So moving on, talking about Right to Play. So Right to Play is a global organization that works with children and youth. It was founded over 20 years ago and has so far reached about 1.52 million children in at least 15 countries. In terms of our vision is to empower 100 million children by 2030 and create a more peaceful and equitable world for children. And our mission is to protect, educate, and empower children to rise above adversity using the power of play. So where do we work as Right to Play? Like I said, we have a global presence in several countries across the world. From the map, you can see we're distributed from North America all the way to South Asia. Our largest presence is in Africa, as you can see from the map as well. And we also have presence in the MENA region in the Middle East and North Africa. So what do we do within these countries? Within all these countries that we work, so we run programs in 4 strategy areas of quality education, child protection, girls empowerment, and health and psychosocial well-being. And this is taking into consideration the fact that children across the world, depending on their location, face different social issues. So we also try to respond to the issues that are specific to the children that we work with in a response to their context. So countries have the liberty to select either one or more of these strategy areas and design programs to improve any of these areas. And they can also explore other areas, even though not listed on our strategy areas, but have the potential to improve outcomes for children and youth. Within Canada, we usually partner annually with about 75 Indigenous communities. And within the program that is the Envelope program, which is an Indigenous program, so we have our core health and wellness program, also called the Play program. We also have other program areas. We run sports for development clinics. We run youth leadership symposiums and youth leadership programs. And we also have like an emergency crisis response when there are communities that are affected by crisis. And we also finally have our educational partnerships, which is in line with our quality education outcome area, where we build the capacity of educators, teachers, to employ play-based methodology in classrooms. This is the map of Canada to the left, and it just shows the spread of our communities across the country from Yukon Territory all the way to the east in Newfoundland. Our largest presence in Canada is in Ontario, where we partner with about 40 communities. And then we also have BC, where we partner with about 25 communities. Yeah, so like I mentioned, our core program and the focus of our conversation today will be on the health and wellness program and how we use SurveyCTO to collect data for the health and wellness program and the data workflow within the health and wellness program. Yes, so our play program, just to provide a summary, we run play-based activities, and which are usually after-school programming for children and youths in communities. And the ultimate outcome we're trying to achieve with this program area is to promote the health and psychosocial well-being of children and youth. We have community mentors working in the communities, and community mentors are staff that are trained by Right to Play, but are also employed by the community in some sort of partnership. And these community mentors are our presence in communities. They plan the programs, they run the programs, they are like the frontline workers in communities, but they receive training support, capacity building support, and financial support from Right to Play program officers. So just wanted to give a brief summary because we mentioned community mentors a lot. And in terms of monitoring and evaluation activities, our community mentors are expected to submit attendance data, registration data for children and youth that attend program. And if they have other events, they're expected to submit data using our program forms on SurveyCTO. Just also provide some type of summary on our play programs. So we expect that each community organizes and runs at least 8 hours of programming every week with children and youth that are registered. And to also provide some summary around our reach for last year, for example, in 2022, we reached about 3,807 children directly with program activities. And this also shows the gender disaggregation of boys, girls, and non-binary children. And community mentors also host events, and events are an opportunity to bring adults and other community members in the same space with children to create that, improved relationship among children and the community that they're in. The expectation is that CMs run at least 3 programs every year, but they have the liberty to host as much as they want. So we have intergenerational events where there are adults and elders from the community. And we also have youth-led events. And the difference is that for youth-led events, in our bid to improve the leadership skills of youths, we support them to host events among their peers as well. I'll hand over to Ali to discuss the data workflow within the program. And so over to you, Ali.
Thanks, Billy, and hi, everyone. Happy to have all of you here. So I will move on to how the data workflow works within the Play program, Right to Play in Canada. So right now we're using SurveyCTO as a platform to collect and to monitor all of the data that is being collected in the communities. And this also helps us to measure our reach and our outputs. We are collecting data on SurveyCTO using 3 forms. The first one is the participants list form. In this one, basically community mentors are every day registering new participants that are any children or youth that are attending to the Right to Play programs for the first time. Second, we have the program attendance form. In this one, community mentors report on a daily or in a weekly basis all of the program details about the program sessions that are being done with the children and the youth each day. Some of the details that community mentors collect through this form are the date in which the program session was done, the type, if for example it was an in-person program session or real-time virtual, the attendance, because community mentors have the opportunity at the end of the form to select all of the children and the youth from the community that attended to a specific program session on a specific date. And we also ask to provide a summary of activities to get to know what the program session was about. And the third form is the Indigenous events form. As Dilly was mentioning, we have intergenerational and youth-led events. So in this form, community mentors report the events that were done during the program year within the community, if they were either intergenerational or youth-led. And we also ask community mentors to submit information about the attendees. So for example, how many adults and how many children attended. And we also ask community mentors to submit this data disaggregating by gender as well. On SurveyCTO, as I was mentioning, we have these 3 forms in which every single day, on a weekly, monthly basis, community mentors are collecting data. But we also use SurveyCTO to conduct our annual surveys, basically which are the baseline and the end-line assessments in which we measure the impact that has been achieved and reached in the communities. And we also gather story collection to be able also to collect data, not only quantitative data, but also narratives and stories from the communities about the impact that has been reached. So in this slide, you can see the process, how the data workflow works within the PLAY program and by using SurveyCTO. So basically, the process starts when a new participant, either a child or a youth, attends the program. When this happens, the community mentors goes into SurveyCTO to the PLAY participant form and registers the new participant that is attending specifically to the Right to Play program. The details and the data that is collected in this registration process includes the name of the child or the youth, the gender, as Julie was mentioning, we do the disaggregation between female, male, and non-binary. We also ask the birthday to be able to capture the age of the participant, and we are also asking if they are experiencing any type of disability. After this, all of the information that is captured in the participants list form is uploaded inside of the platform of SurveyCTO into the server. So this is very beneficial for us because once the community mentor is submitting the program attendance, which is another form on SurveyCTO, they are able to select in the last question all of the names of the children that attended to a specific program session on a specific date. And this helps us in the MEL team and in Right to Play to be able to capture how many actual children and youth are we reaching and impacting during the program sessions. All of this information from the server and from the forms is saved on SurveyCTO for the MEL team to be able to capture all of this data and to build reports to be able to follow up with the communities and to be able to do any improvements if needed. So some of the values added by SurveyCTO is first, the easy reach calculation. So how I was mentioning is community mentors register all of the children in one of the forms, and all of this data is not only saved in the form, but also in the server. So as you can see in the first tab in the slide, all of the data that is collected by community mentors about the children that are attending the programs is saved in the blue box, basically, which is the PLAY participants list. But all of this data inside of SurveyCTO is uploaded and updated into the server, which is the green box that you can see in the first tab. So in this way, we're able to capture all of the children that are attending to the programs and also to calculate a reach, which is basically, in other words, how many children and how many youth are we reaching in the communities that we have a partnership, and also being able to disaggregate by each one of the communities. In the second tab, you can see that another value added is a seamless attendance process. So how I was mentioning, community mentors are able to select when they are submitting the program attendance, the names of the children that have been attending to each one of the program sessions. And for that to be able to select who are actual the children that are going to Right to Play programs. And the third value is the child data protection. So what happens is when a community mentor registers a child and a new participant on SurveyCTO, to each one of the participants, UUID, which you can see in the third tab, is basically a unique ID, is established for each one of the children. So in this way, only the MEL team, Dilly, another team member of our team, and we are able to access the names of the participants and also the community mentors, of course, when they are selecting the children that are attending to each program session. So what is the importance of all of these data that has been collected through SurveyCTO within Right to Play Canada? First is the transparency and accountability. All of the data that is collected helps us to being accountable to our funders, to the communities, and also to ourselves to have transparency in our practices. It also helps us to measure all of the progress towards our outcomes and our outputs that we have been establishing in our logic model, and also to being able to measure the progress that we have with children and the youth in the communities. It also helps us to generate evidence, which is very, very important to be able to improve, to make improvements along the way, and also to make decisions or changes if needed. And of course, within Right to Play, fundraising is a very important activity and task here in the organization. So all of this data also helps us to provide a more robust basis for raising funds and also for being able to attract more donors. And here I will get it back to Dilly.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ali, for sharing all of that. So moving on, another additional value that we're able to get in our work with Indigenous people is to be able to uphold OCAP principles. And OCAP basically stands for ownership, control, access, and possession. And it's from the First Nations Information Governance Center. And this principle actually stems from the long history of unwholesome research and data collection practices towards Indigenous people, which has actually been mostly extractive with very little consideration of Indigenous worldviews and Indigenous approaches to data collection and research. So like I mentioned in the beginning, we work with Indigenous communities, we're allies to Indigenous communities, and so we try to uphold principle of respectful and reciprocal research. And just also highlight that the principle states that Indigenous peoples have a right to be in full control of their data, and which supports strong information governance on the path to First Nations data sovereignty. Just also provide some small details as to what ownership means, control, access, and possession in relation to these. So ownership just simply refers to the relationship of Indigenous people to their own cultural knowledge and data and information. Control affirms that First Nations people and their communities and representative bodies are within their right to seek control over all aspects of the research and information management processes as it concerns them and as it impacts them. Access basically refers to the fact that Indigenous people must have access to the information about them at all times, regardless of where it's held. And possession is just the mechanism by which ownership is asserted and protected. So to uphold these principles, we have installed a plugin on our Play attendance form specifically called Zapier. And Zapier is just an automation tool that lets you easily create workflows that involve common web applications and services. And this helps us in such a way that our community partners have access and they own the data that they submit to us in real time. And they're also able to give us permission either to access it, view it, and to save it on our SurveyCTO server and other places that we have, with the understanding that they have access to it as well. So how do we work with Zapier on our form? So the first step is to attach the Zapier plugin to the attendance form. And it's a very seamless process. The first thing we have to do in doing that is to generate an API key on SurveyCTO. And you can do that by going to the export tab and just looking at the advanced publishing form and data set to the cloud. Once you generate the API code, then you go create an account on Zapier and use that API code to link your form to the trigger, to something that you call a trigger. And in that way, you automate the process of once a community mentor in community runs a program and clicks submit on the data that they're sending, then they also get a copy of the data as well. And then we have other systems that, ensure that the data is reviewed and approved. And then before we now have final access to it, or before we now tag it as final. after each program, the CMs will submit attendance using this form. And then after the data is submitted and reviewed, like I mentioned, and all the quality assurance checks are completed, then they get a copy of the approved data in an email triggered by Zapier. So this is just a summary of how, we use SurveyCTO. Working with SurveyCTO, we're able to also uphold one of the really key and important principles in working with Indigenous people around data protection, data ownership, and data sovereignty. And I think we've come to the very end. So I'll hand over back to you, Mofia.
All right. No, thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. I think that was enlightening. Hopefully, folks, if you have questions, feel free to put those questions in the Q&A. What we'll do is we'll just have a brief discussion to just learn more about what has been presented, and then we'll jump into the questions that you have that you've asked. So I'll just ask Dele and Ali a couple of questions, and then we'll jump into the questions that are in the Q&A. So Dele, Ali, any of you can pick up any of the questions I ask. Feel free to just comment on them. So the first question that I have here is, what tips would you give male professionals about building strong partnerships with the communities they provide programming and collect data from? What tips would you give to professionals about how they can build strong partnerships with the communities that they provide programming and collect data from? Any of you can pick up that question and just share a bit more with us.
Okay, thanks, Mofia. Ali, is okay if I go, right? I'll just take this. Okay. So yeah, thanks for the question. Really interesting question. So our practice within Right to Play is to involve communities in all stages of the data collection process. That also involves the design, the planning for data collection, and also what type of data we'll collect, the frequency of collection. Also let them know what their roles and the expectations and what we expect from them are in terms of the process. Communicate that. If there are any gaps in their capacity to deliver that, find a way to build their capacity, provide them with the right tools. And so we found that just doing all of that, involving them, building their capacity, and providing them mentorship around data and the data collection practices improves, the practice for us, and we're able to work collaboratively with them. And they have a sense of ownership towards the data because they contribute to the process. And we'll also support them to, use the data to improve programming. So beyond just collecting it, how can they use that to improve the programming in their communities? So doing that, I think that's like an advice I can give to other male professionals, and based on our experience on how they can strengthen and improve data collection with the communities that they're working with or working for.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Another question, again, either of you can go with this one. Your play program focuses on a crucial aspect of children and youth's lives, mainly their health and their psychosocial well-being. Do you have any brief examples or stories that can help us picture the impact that you've been able to make through this particular program?
Yes, I can take this question, Dilly. So we have an amazing report which we publish every year after the end of the program year, in which our communications team work. I think Lindo can share that in the chat, but just to give like a heads up of what you can find in this report, for example, we evaluate and measure the impact of the programs during the year. For example, at the last program year, some of the results that we achieved were, for example, that 80% of the children and the youth attending to Right to Play programs have seen improvements in their health and also in their well-being. Another result was that 87% of the participants knew about the importance of maintaining healthy relationships, and also 87% of these children not only knew about the importance of healthy relationships, but they were also practicing them with peers within the community. Some of these are the results. But of course, also all of the narratives and the stories of the impacts that are achieved within the communities are also very important. So for example, there was a story from one of the participants who was mentioning that by being part of Right to Play programs, he felt more active in playing the sports that the program provided, and also he felt more comfortable in the future to have a leadership role. Another one mentioned, for example, that he or she wanted to study also related to youth development. So these are some, and these are only just some to make a summary, because if not, I will be here like for an hour saying all of the impacts that Right to Play programs achieve. But these are just some of the results and the impacts that we have been achieving within the communities.
Oh, that's really great to hear. I think that's quite encouraging. It's always good to have an opportunity to see the impact of the work that you're doing, and it's good to hear that. I think the link has been shared, so for others who would want to dig into a bit more detail about the impact, please feel free to look through the document that has been shared. I'll ask one more question, and then we can go into the questions that we have in the Q&A. Which features or tools or resources on SurveyCTO would you say have been most helpful to your data collection activities or workflows? I think you presented quite a few. Just maybe if you can give a highlight of that.
Dilly, I can take this question too, and I think with my answer, I can answer several questions that are in the Q&A. So some of the very SurveyCTO has a lot of characteristics that have helped us to be able to have timely and accurate data. So the first thing that I'm going to mention is that on SurveyCTO, you always have a customer relationship platform in which you can always ask questions. They are available for you 24 hours to help you with any question that you have about the system or with any issue that you're having. And with all of the workflow that I showed, SurveyCTO has also other characteristics, for example, you're able to review the data before you get a final report of the data. So every time a community mentor, for example, submits the program attendance or information about a program session, the mail team is able to enter to the system and to review if the data is correct. If not, to see which changes can be done, and then you can approve it or unapprove it. And in that way, the data that is being approved by the mail team is the one that is going to go to the final report. You can access the data. Another thing very important for SurveyCTO is that we can access the data right away. So every time a new data is being collected about participants, about the program sessions or the events, we can access almost immediately at the system and bring and export all of the reports from SurveyCTO, either if it was quantitative or qualitative data that has been collected. And the other thing that I think I saw in the Q&A was how we making sure that we don't have any duplicates. Also for the participants, so SurveyCTO allows also for the mail team to download the data, to download the file of the information that you want to review, make changes in the Excel file, and then upload again the clean data set of, for example, in this case of the participants or any data set that you need to clean. And in that way, you can review if there are any duplicates and just have the accurate data. If not, there is also another process on SurveyCTO in which you can limit the names, for example, in this case, the names of the children, so no duplicates are generated. So if there is a community mentor that is registering, for example, another Alejandra Fandino in the system, SurveyCTO is not going to allow it. But that's a process that has to be done in SurveyCTO to not have those types of duplicates. I don't know, Dilly, if you want to add something into that.
Yeah, I could, but I'm wondering if we're pressed for time. So another feature that is really useful is the support center. Just being able to reach out directly to SurveyCTO and get support or response that is tailored to the need that you have is just really helpful, because there are a lot of resources on SurveyCTO, there are a lot of recordings, webinars, and sometimes it's not all the time that those will respond specifically to the question you have. So it's always like, I find it really useful to just reach out to the support center and get your queries responded to really fast, and it will be most relevant to you or to what you want to achieve, or what problems you have here. So I think that's one feature that is really helpful for me working with SurveyCTO.
Great. Awesome. No, thank you. Thank you so much. I know Ali touched on some of the questions we have in the QA, so we'll get to those in just a bit. I just wanted to emphasize a couple of things that have already come up. If you've never used SurveyCTO before, please feel free to open up. You can open up a trial server even today. And as Adele has just mentioned, we have a support team that's willing to work with you 24/7 to be able to help any paid or trial users. But also we have a community that you can reach out to of other SurveyCTO users that you can engage with to be able to get more information about SurveyCTO, ask questions about their workflows, and so on. So if you're interested in opening up a server, you can reach out to Maria. She's part of our sales team. She's always willing to be able to engage with you and help you out in case of anything. But also feel free to join our social media networks so that you can keep up to date with things like this that we're doing now. So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, you'll be able to find us there, and we'll be able to engage with you in any way that you need to.